Hey, welcome everybody to Two Drunk Dudes in a Gun Room. Hey, today I've got Audrey and Jonathan with Bourbon Battle Buddies. How you guys doing?
Thrilling.
I know we've had an interesting conversation backstage about bourbon.
It is
guys,
it is quintessentially the best thing in the world.
yeah, I mean, you guys have made me feel like I thought I knew a little bit about bourbon until today. Now I feel like I'm the student learning again.
But that's the fun part about it. Like I enjoy the learning process about learning where it all comes from. You know what I mean? There's more.
Oh yeah,
to it
absolutely. But I mean, that's the purpose of bourbon. It's a socializing drink. I mean, that's the point, is to get you around friends and to share it and have conversation.
Yeah, they always say that, bourbon is a stepping stone, right? And for me, I'm always interested in the next pour. They always say, well, what's your favorite, right? So, of course, I'll always start with a Blanton straight from the barrel or gold, right? Those are kind of like my standards, right? But the magic of bourbon, and especially veteran-owned distilleries, is exploring something that hasn't been explored before. And bourbon always leads you into something special and unique.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know your podcast is coming out here real soon with their first episode. So how did the name come about? Let's start with the name, because I love the name. When I seen it, that's what literally attracted me to the Facebook page, and then asking to have you guys come on the show. So how did the name start?
I'd say probably about a year ago, maybe. I was doing some YouTube stuff around whiskey, and I just kind of felt like it was kind of lacking, right? Because I love doing the whiskey part of it, but there was a part of me that was wanting to do something bigger, something more. And I was getting into the veteran world. I mean, I've been out for a while. I've been out for 17 years. So there's a lot of that I've lost contact with over time, right?
Yeah.
So I started getting back into the veteran communities and trying to figure out where things were headed. And I realized I wanted to do something. I still wanted to do the YouTube, the podcast, all that stuff, but I wanted it to be more centered on veterans. And so I came up with the name Bourbon Battle Buddies because it was a way of combining. Basically, it's everything the podcast is about, right? We love great bourbon. We want to sit down. We want to have a conversation. We want to share a passion, but we also want to uplift with positivity and motivation and information, and just open up a conversation about not to be okay, and just get people more comfortable with talking about mental health. And that was my way of giving back. And through the whole course of all this, getting into the veteran community and the whiskey scene, I seen Audrey on both ends of that spectrum, and actually I reached out to her to come on to the People's Patriot Project podcast, because there was some interest in where her foundation was coming from. So I reached out to her, and we kind of just built a relationship from there. And I realized that she would be a great asset and a great battle buddy moving forward. So I asked her if she would join me on the Bourbon Battle Buddies podcast, and it was the easiest question I think she ever had to answer.
Bourbon, veterans, my veteran family, like twist my arm, like sure. I could talk about bourbon. That's really a military owned craft, and get the ability to have people who are struggling with mental health illness, PTSD, being able to really talk about it, get down deep, but then keep it light. The true facts is that when you become homeless, you're 90% of killing yourself, right? You got that 90% chance of just dying. And there are extreme amounts of homeless veterans in this country. And the VA is not doing enough right? People are getting turned away if they're 100% service connected. They're being told that they are over income. And at some VAs, they're using money from the discretionary fund, which has over $100 million, right? So we know that we can get veterans with vouchers. And some VAs are really doing that. Other VAs are turning veterans away. And we know that when you get turned away, it is a death sentence, right?
Yeah.
So we just have to do better. We have to save the lives of our brothers and sisters here right now. And the fastest way to do that is to let them know that there's somebody there to talk to, right? That we are always going to be battles, no matter what, right? And I don't have to know you, right? I don't have to know you, Donald, right, at all. But if you need me, right, that bond, that enlistment oath that we signed, that we're going to defend the Constitution, but most of all, we're going to defend each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got to do that mentally, right? We have to let them know that PTSD is real and that most of us have it, and that it's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to get help, and it's okay to be encouraging to get help. But we got to stand shoulder to shoulder and make sure that we are ending veteran suicide. That's just it. And and if we could use bourbon, whiskey for good, like I do my nonprofit, we do fundraisers centered around whiskey tastings, right? Mm-hmm. So we're allowed people to connect into the taste and the craft of whiskey, reminding them that this is a field that veterans helped create, that the founding fathers had their hands into, right? And that there's a whole path for veterans to come into and learn this craft. But there's also another point where you're allowed to be mentally okay. You're allowed to say that you want to kill yourself, right? You're allowed to say, I have suicidal ideation. It's very important for us to actually start getting after these topics, because the sooner we can say that this is how we feel of ourselves, and this is the steps that we took, and it might not be your steps, but this is a path forward to get out of darkness. Yeah. And let's do that, right? Let's do that, because we need to start talking about it. We got to save lives.
Yeah. And the healing doesn't start until, like you said, until you admit that that's where you're at. Right. There's still that barricade between the people trying to help you and yourself. So until you actually come out and say it, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Right. That healing doesn't start. So absolutely, it is extremely important to say it. And it's extremely important for the people that are trying to help you to not be afraid to ask it. To just come out and say it. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Mm-hmm.
And being prepared for if that response is yes, right?
Cheers, there, Parzival.
Cheers. But if that response is yes, right? What does a battle do? Right? Yeah. And so that's important to say, okay, well, we now know that we got one of our own that needs help, right? But how do we get into it, right? Do I call 988, right? Do I just sit down and talk with them and say, hey, do you want to have a glass of bourbon and go for a hike, right? Yeah. You need someone to listen to you. Are you just fucking angry and you want to scream your fucking head off right now? Like, you want to go punch a tree with some boxing gloves with me? Like, you got to learn to know your battle, right? And so that's important that we constantly check in for each other, that we're there for each other, because nobody's going to be there for us but us. It's been proven. My foundation would not be around to help veterans with homelessness if it didn't exist, right?
So I have to read this comment. Can you guys see the comment?
He said, I'm so drunk tonight, I'll shave my head clean live if a woman comes in and smokes with me. What are you smoking? Cigars? Weed? What you got? I mean, I'm open to this possible option. You just have to tell me what you're providing. Like, maybe?
Oh, Parzival.
Yeah, anyway. I have questions.
Well, welcome to the show, Parzival. You made us all laugh. But yeah, no, absolutely. And the other part that you said that was really important there was the person that's trying to help you needs to know what to do if that answer is yes. Because I have seen from my career where that answer was yes. And then they talked for a while and then the question came up, "Are you okay?" And the other guy said yes, and he left him alone, and he ended up killing himself. So
Right.
there is things that you need to know what to do, and it is extremely important to know that once that question comes back as yes, until you get them help, not to leave them alone.
Right.
It's better to take them serious, and let's get rid of some of these myths about, well, if you're talking about it, you're not serious.
Mm-hmm.
None of those myths are true. If somebody says it, you need to take it serious.
100%.
Acting all messed up today. We've been having some storms out here, so the internet's getting all crazy. We got some nice hailstorms yesterday. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, like softball size. So everybody right now, the body shops are getting jammed with people taking their cars today. So,
Mm-hmm. No,
so I think that's messing up.
I don't mess with none of that stuff, man.
What's that? Hail? What's that?
Cold weather.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Well, it definitely ain't cold. It's just showing us that Mother Nature ain't done with us, I guess.
She's never done.
Yeah, you ain't lying.
It's
Doing
never.
good, Jason. Doing good.
Oh man.
Yeah, Jason, how's it going, man? Jason Steiner, I think you guys have talked with him, man. He is an amazing guy with Hero Stock. And if you guys get a chance to go, you need to go, because I'm gonna be up there, and it is going to be a blast. And there isn't going to be a guy up there that sells bourbon, so
I've seen that.
You'll have to come.
I've seen that.
I'm gonna buy a bottle.
Veteran, right?
Yeah, it's a veteran-owned business.
That's
Yeah,
what I thought.
absolutely.
Sinking me in, reeling me in.
Yeah.
It's in
See,
Nebraska. No.
I was just helping Jason out because it's just a matter of time before he throws that plug out there. So I was just helping him out.
Oh man, I love it. And so I guess that's important. It's important to really recognize is that, how many of us are starting to get into this craft again, right? Like this was ours and other people took it over. And there's this great book called, and it's written by a veteran as well. It's called Bullets and Bourbon, right? And so it kind of goes over the whole history of what bourbon is and how the military has played this integral role in it. And so as veterans are like transitioning out of the military right now, there's this like really amazing area for them to go explore. Like they could be a distiller, they could become a brand ambassador, right? They could work at a farm where this corn for this mash is actually being harvested, right? So there are so many different programs out there that you can say, wow, I kind of want to do farming. And maybe I want to grow some to help a distillery. That's another veteran owned distillery. And so there's a way for us to start building the blocks again to this magical craft of bourbon that can be completely veterans, completely us, right? And so I kind of think there's a place where we just take that back. We take back what the juice looks like, right?
Yeah,
we start bringing back our pre-prohibition juices that have been lost by the wayside, and we start making something new that's quintessentially us, like that's us. And then we have the ability to save lives with it, and it's kind of a no-brainer. And the more you're able to say, well, hey guys, I have PTSD, right? I've been through the ringer. I've put a Glock 17 in my mouth and pulled the trigger, right? And I'm still here, like the gun jammed, right? So I'm supposed to be here to let you know, like, I've been in that dark corner that you have been at, right?
Wow.
I've been there. I'm alive. I shouldn't be, but I'm alive, right? And so I don't want you to suffer like I did. I don't want it, right? So my foundation and using board sport therapy, like snowboarding, we do cognitive based therapy for like 20 minutes. We just talk about your stuck point for 20 minutes. That's it. And then we go put ourselves on a board, right? It could be a one wheel, a surfboard, a snowboard. We could hike, right? But we have to release trauma through movement. And the biggest thing that veterans do is we disassociate from our pain. We're trained to do it, right?
Yeah.
And then it comes to PTSD and we're even worse with it, right? So we have to get veterans back into situational awareness readiness, right? We can't have a veteran that disassociates from their pain. So we're allowed to come together and heal together, right? And this is something when we were in the military together, we had PT together, we ate together. When you're removed from that, right? You leave the military, there's just this gapping loss, right? That brotherhood, that sisterhood that's there that you're used to, it's gone. It's gone from you. And so, veterans are so easily to fall by the wayside is because they've been stripped from their family. We've already given up our family, right? We joined the military. This is a sacrifice of our service. Our family has moved on. They've had all these holidays without us.
Yeah.
But we've spent our holidays with our military family, and then it's taken from you. And so we have to start as a veteran community saying, there's still one here. Like, you are worthy of living. You're worthy of it. Like, my year from last year to this is totally different, right? But I'm in gratitude every day because I got a new chance every single day. And I want every single veteran to wake up and know that they are worthy of being alive. That's it. Like, don't die. I didn't. Come with me, right? And my journey doesn't have to be the same steps that you take, but still walk in the way of the warrior that you are. Come back to it. Come back to it. Because every last one of us is a warrior, right?
Absolutely.
We have joined to defend this Constitution. And so it's very important that we empower our warriors back. We need to. We got to get after it. There's no choice about it.
Yeah,
I've used this analogy before, where there's a straight line, and that straight line is not life, because life doesn't travel in a straight direction, right? It goes everywhere. But if you keep down that path and you keep walking, eventually you're going to cross paths with somebody in the middle.
Right.
Or you'll cross paths with somebody over here, and you can walk together and put them back to the middle. And that's the analogy that I like to use is, eventually you're going to come across somebody. All you got to do is be available. You know what I mean? It's about having a voice and using it for good. And eventually somebody's going to pick up on that, and they're going to be like, hey man, I seen something you said, or seen something you posted, whatever it is you're into. And they're going to come to you with a question. And at that point, you have to have prepared yourself to be the leader and to take them by the hand and walk with them back. However long that takes, you know what I mean? You just walk with them until you pass split directions again. And they may not. You may walk together for a while, but the paths keep intersecting, and that's the thing. And I just think we all need to be available and be ready, because the time's going to come when someone needs us, and we need to be prepared.
But I think that's a big part of what this community does, whether we know it or not, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a podcaster, whether you're doing a radio station like I've done, whether you're doing hero stock like Jason, all of these things interlink. And somehow, just like you said, us veterans are going to cross each other multiple times, and it keeps putting people back in your lives that care, to ask those questions. Hey, how you doing? How you been? And I know I do it a lot, and I've had people do it to me where if I haven't heard from somebody for a while, I'll reach out and say, hey, I ain't heard from you for a while. How have you been doing? Just checking in, And I think that's the good thing about the smaller organizations. It's kind of like our conversation earlier before the show started about the smaller VAs, It's the sense of care. Not so much about the budget and about the ability. It's just the fact that somebody cares. And that's a big part. The other thing I want to ask, because it's happened to me a lot, and when we first started this podcast, I got a lot of slack.
Yes. You kind of skipped it for a bit, but
you guys back?
where this is headed.
We're still here. You're quite frozen though. It looks good with the weapons in the back. Though. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I don't. Man, this is the first time it's ever done it to me too. I don't know why it's doing it. It has to be something to do with that storm that came through. Y'all back? All right. So, I caught a lot of slack. As soon as people see my name, 2 drunk dudes and a gun, you don't know how many people hit me up and said, oh, great. Let's just give a bunch of depressed soldiers depressants. And I'm like, depressants?
Jonathon, I'm about to fuck this question up, right?
Yeah. I'm like, what depressant am I giving them? I mean, because alcohol is not a depressant. It doesn't make you depressed. It might depress your nervous system because it's not a stimulant, but that has nothing to do with, your mood or any of that stuff. I said, and then second of all, when have I made anybody drink?
Right.
I haven't put a gun to anybody's head and said, hey, if you're going to be on the show, you're going to get drunk.
Right.
I mean, that's not what it's about. And I would just tell them, I said, man, evidently you haven't watched the show. I mean, that's obvious, because it's a name, man. It's something that veterans can recognize. And if you were a veteran and you don't get this, did you make it through basic? Because I'm really curious, where did you get chaptered at what point, but have you guys had any of that happen yet where people have jumped on you?
Donald. So let me just say this, right? One, I'm going to say again that bourbon is quintessentially military, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, I've literally had to, I've been offered, money for my foundation, right? And I'm building veteran villages. So it's really kind of important. I need that, right? I need that to help save the lives of veterans. We know that adaptive sports helps reduce the rates of suicide for veterans. So this is something I'm passionate about. This is something I do myself. And sports saves lives. So for someone to come and say that they're willing to give me money, but that I shouldn't be using alcohol for my nonprofit is completely offensive. One, it says founder and president on my foundation, right? So I run the stuff I want to. You don't. Secondly, to say that alcohol is an evil for veterans is wrong. Every single veteran, as they're trying to heal for their trauma, has chosen something, right? Something. So it could be like, I'm going to isolate, right? It could be, I'm going to overeat and binge eat, right? Sometimes it's alcohol. Don't blame alcohol for the chosen path that a veteran is trying to express their trauma in.
Right.
I get it, right? But alcohol is not to blame. It's not to blame. It is the trauma that is present that needs to be addressed. And I'm pretty sure if you start getting after that with therapy, with sports, with overall wellness, with getting back in physical shape, right? When you start getting into your warrior mindset again, that's when you start healing, right?
Yeah,
the alcohol is not the problem. That's what you've chosen. If you've chosen to deal with your trauma and try to numb your pain that way, that's what you've chosen. But there's plenty of other ways veterans have chosen to deal with that trauma. And overeating is one of those, right? Like, especially for rapes in the military. We know that binge eating is one of those things connected to PTSD across the board, right? So you're either not eating well enough or overeating. So when are we going to address that, right? Like, why does alcohol have to be the evil? It's not. It's not. And so I've had my whiskey community, Whiskey for Warriors come out and they've been like, hey, we're going to sell some bottles, and it's not been a lot, right? But whatever we get off of there, we're going to donate to your nonprofit because we know that you're passionate about whiskey and you're not willing to blame alcohol as the reason for trauma. So that's where I'm at on that one.
I think it also goes back to the other thing that's important too. the what's going on with veterans is sad, but we need to also realize that treating us like victims is not going to solve any problems, right? You're not going to help. You're not, helping anybody by treating them like a victim. So to say, well, it's not your fault. You're drinking all the time. It's because of what's going on. It's your trauma, or it's because the alcohol caused you to do this. I get it. You made a choice to deal with it, but at some point you still have to deal with your consequences. And that too is part of the healing. We had this conversation on another show a while back. If another way that people deal with this is through substance abuse. A lot of drug problems with the situation. And when you try to help somebody that's addicted to drugs, you can't go into it expecting that, they decided they're going to get off of it and they're done. They're going to fail. It's going to happen. I've had family members that have tried several times. I've been there and I've been supportive, and all I say is, let me know when you're ready to try again.
Well, see, they might not even know, right? Because if we're not even getting down to the fact of why somebody's being triggered, right? Yeah. Like, hey, why are you deciding to overeat? Why are you deciding to go for that bottle? And it could be like, I smelt something and it triggered a memory back. I had a flashback and I don't want to fucking deal with that memory right now, right? Like I don't even want to mentally go in. So we're not even helping veterans self-identify triggers, right? And it takes a long time as you start breaking down the PTSD, your layers of triggers, right? And you're like, okay, now I know this trigger. I've solved that, right? It's not going to fully go away, but I've been able to eliminate that. So what else in this bucket of, burdens that I'm carrying with me do I need to go tackle? And so we have to teach veterans how to start identifying triggers.
Yeah, I think that's a big part too, because when I got out, like I said, I obviously had PTSD when I got out.
Right.
I didn't just stumble at Walmart and fall into it. But I didn't know that I had it, and I didn't know that I had the problem. I was that guy that said, there's nothing wrong with me. Everybody else is fucked up. It's not me.
Right.
And I probably chose the wrong career. I couldn't find a job when I got out. So I started a trucking company, which didn't help because I put myself in a truck in a small, isolated area, driving 650 miles a day by myself 6 weeks at a time, doing nothing but thinking. So it allowed me to get further and further in my head, and things just escalated and it got worse and worse. But like you said, until there was a breaking point and I was forced to go get help, and what was happening to me, I didn't know I had an issue, and the things that I was doing to me felt normal. Coming home from work, eating my meal, and then going to the bedroom and leaving my family out in the front room because I felt comfortable by myself in the bedroom. I didn't want to be around anybody else. That's what made me feel normal. It felt good because I spent the last 68 months basically deployed by myself, So, yeah, that's what, it was bothering my family, but I didn't know it. So until you identify those things, just like you said, you can't even begin to treat it,
Right.
And I think that's another reason why the VAs and the Army and the government really doesn't want to just open up that wallet to fix the problems, because they do know how big this problem really is. You can't just offer substance abuse and think you're going to fix it, because you got to fix why they were using in the first place. Okay, well, then you fix that, but they're homeless, so you got to fix why were they homeless in the first place. It's a chain that takes you back to the military, where when you got out, that's when things fell apart. And they've got to solve all these little problems along that way. And it's not that it's not solvable, because it is solvable. They just don't want it.
Really?
You know,
100%.
it's going to be expensive. It's going to be hard, and it's going to take people that want to do it. And I think that's where the smaller mom and pop nonprofits and stuff like that come in.
We know the true cost of war, right? Yeah. And our federal government does as well. But, sometimes it's been like, let's throw this appropriation money here and see if this works, right? And in other spots, we know that money is not being correctly spent to help save the lives of veterans. We know that these things are failing. Otherwise, all of our nonprofits wouldn't be in existence, right? Like, if this was doing the things that they were supposed to do. So being able to fundamentally change the leadership and making sure that it's a centralized, strong veteran leadership that understands the problem from within and without, right? We know that this is PTSD is defined as a single traumatic event. As far as I'm concerned, every veteran has complex PTSD. Right? Yep. That means that we have had multiple traumatic events that happen to us. So the treatment for that has to be addressed as a complex PTSD. And, they don't know what to do because there's so many of us dying, but they literally, from this war period alone, had 20 years to figure that out. And the numbers have increased of who has been killing themselves. Then we have a significant amount of active duty personnel that are committing suicide, right? So we know that PTSD is happening while we're in service. So addressing it both on the active duty end, right? Catching it, saying, okay, we know we need to implement a mental health program, a wellness program, like 1 day a week, just like we run PT together, that we mentally re-heal the warrior, because the warrior needs to stay in the fight, right? We know that our rates of retention in the military are extremely low. People signing up for a volunteer force are low as well. We've changed the policies for what it means to be able to retire from the military. We've let it become a corporation. We have people that are trying to run the military as civilians rather than as this is military, right? And we have to address it there, because we cannot continue to allow people to transition out of the military and flounder on their own, right? We have to address this in both spots, because if we don't, we're going to keep killing the military from within. And that means we are weakening our country, which just literally weakens our documents that we've sworn our lives to.
I think you're the first person that has said something that I had said behind the scenes for years. You take a pro athlete, right? I don't care what sport. They will all tell you that they have a program that they dedicate for things like mental health and for meditation and breathing, and they literally pay big money to have experts come in to help them get clearer minds and more focus and all that stuff. And they do that because at that level, talent alone is not going to give you that edge to be that top person, right?
Right.
So I've always said the same thing, right? How come we don't do that for our warriors? Because if they went into battle with a more focused, clearer mind, I'm not saying that what they're about to see is not going to mess them up. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it would help on the back end of the units being able to say when it is messed up, hey, I understand now, because we've gone through meditation and we're now understanding. It's like, when you see somebody go to sick call, you can tell whether they're really sick or whether they're faking it, because you deal with the soldiers going to sick call all the time, and you kind of can tell which ones are legitimate and which ones are not. Well, if we were dealing with training our mind and our focus, you would see that same thing. You would be able to start knowing, hey, this ain't normal. There's really something wrong, and we don't do any of that. Instead, we tell you to shrug it off and get back in the fight.
Yeah.
And see, for me, I think that it decreases our combat readiness, right? And so we want our warriors to sustain. You know, we've done 18 months straight where we stop loss people, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because
That
we
was brutal.
mismanaged and didn't plan efficiently for war, right? But so we need people to be as ready as possible to get into that fight. So there's a way for us to train that warrior to get back into the fight and have resiliency, right?
Yep.
So instead of just ignoring that, okay, you know, deaths are happening, this is what's going on, we have to start training for mental health awareness.
Yeah.
We can't just let special forces and, you know, Navy SEALs, they have a trident mindset, right? This is something that I execute as brown water Navy, right? This is our amphibious, this is how we operate. However, the rest of the military, unless you belong to that community, you're not operating in that level, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that's inquisitively wrong. I believe that, you know, and this is what I've asked leadership to do in the military, and I hope they listen to me, right? Like, hey, we need one day of mental health wellness, right? And it could be where I'm putting people on board sports, right? And they're just talking about what's going on for about 20 minutes, because none of us want to do an hour of therapy, right? But if I can make it fun, you're willing to talk and get real with yourself. And the faster I can get you to deal with what's going on, especially on active duty, the faster I can get you better to get back into the fight.
Yeah.
And that's what empowerment of our military is, right? We want the strongest warriors because we are supposed to be the best nation in the world. We cannot do what we did to our military for 18 months and expect people to want to stay in the military. You cannot grind them down. You cannot have them on the West Coast right now in a shipyard working for that many hours and then wondering why all these suicides are happening from the ship. Well, listen, man, you knew that this ship needed to be dry docked. You can't grind people down and expect them not want to fucking kill themselves.
Yep.
We have to go kill the enemy. And we cannot do this to ourselves. And that's where leadership has to really say, am I making the best warrior here? And they're not. And there's better ways to do it. And we've all said this, right? And they've all ignored it. You can't ignore it anymore. You cannot ignore it. You cannot ignore that we know how to make ourselves better. And that's all we're doing. I'm not here to complain about the military. I fucking love the military through and through, right? Even though I was raped in the military, I love the military. I want it to be the best version of what it can be. And I want my military to be effective killers. I mean, that's, you know, that's what we are. Yes, we help global events around the world for humanitarian things. But in the end, we are here to defend this country. And we got to make sure we do it the right way. And we have to invest into these soldiers, into these sailors, the way that these people are signing up their lives to invest back into this country. It just has to happen. Has to happen. We can't weaken our military anymore. Our adversaries are getting stronger.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
100%.
And, you know, the other thing too, and I know as a warrior, there's going to be people out there that disagree, but I think there should be a cap on how many times you can deploy a soldier, you know. And I never thought about this until I got help, you know. So the first time I went and seen a psychologist, that initial appointment where they kind of find out a little bit about you and everything else. And one of the things that he had me bring in was my DD-214. And he was talking to me and he looked through, and as he was talking, he stopped and looked at me and he said, "Is this accurate?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You were deployed for 68 months out of 20 years?" I said, "Yeah." I said, that's about right. I said, if you count Bosnia, you know. I said, you know, Bosnia was a peacekeeping mission, so it wasn't really a combat, you know. I said, but that was 9 months. And he just shook his head. He said, there should be a law. He said, no wonder you're fucked up. He said, you can't send somebody like that many times, you know. And he wrote a book on PTSD, and I didn't know nothing about him. A friend referred me to him, and he literally was never in the military, but he went and went through like SEAL training and everything else so that he could kind of get an idea when he was writing his book. And he helped Fort Stewart kind of get a PTSD program and everything. And he ended up closing his practice, and the Air Force gave him a contract to run PTSD programs for them. So he really did know what he was talking about. And there was just some things that the government or the military just would not listen, and that's one of them. You know, they do not want, they don't want to put a cap, because then that means they need more people in the military to fill the slots for the people that they can't deploy no more. But, you know, there's still use for those warriors that have reached that cap, because I don't know what we're going to do to train because those old timers, they're gone.
Yeah.
They left shortly after 9/11 started, because they seen it coming. They got tired of it. They got burned out. And so all of our old leadership left. So you see a lot more of the 9/11 soldiers that they burned out that don't make it to retirement now, because they were so fucked up because of the way they were used and abused. So there's no, I don't know where they're going to find the discipliners, the trainers. I don't know.
Or even just the mentorship, right? Yeah. So, you know, what we're seeing now is like our old timers, our salty fuckers, right? That's what I like to call them. And I love those guys, right? They're just salty as they come. And you're like, man, you've been in the Navy for a long time, right? But it comes with this pocket of knowledge and mentorship, right? So even now in this, we've lost this mentorship, right? We don't do that anymore. So like we just have service members just navigating this system without mentorship. And I just know that, you know, I had a CO that was very influential in my career or where I wanted to go in life. I graduated from Penn State, you know, because he gave me, you know, hey, go to Penn State. You're worthy of this, right? Yeah. But we don't have this anymore. We don't have that. And there is a way to make sure that if we have to do, you know, where we have people at an 18-month deployment, which is horrendous, right? But they knew this was coming. And we're like literally making individual augmentees, putting 30,000 Army personnel home and then grabbing 30,000 not trained Navy personnel up to Army standards, right? And putting them at Fort Jackson, right? When you know that your School of Infantry is going to be at Benning, right? And you're giving National Guardsmen weapons that don't even fire, and then you're forward deploying them into Iraq because all the weapons are there because we're in a clusterfuck, right? So we know that if we can have wellness, right, if we can put mitigation strategies in, we can get people back to the fight faster. We can. And so that's what it's making about longevity for a person that's in a career, putting mitigation strategies in so they can get back to the fight faster, be mentally tough, put a trident mindset in there and get back. Like we have to do this. We just have to do this. And we know what we know what we're talking about, right? Like we are us. And so, you know, military leadership they're just going to have to start understanding that we know how to fix our military, whether we're in it or not anymore. And we have the passion to make sure that we want to see the military succeed. We want good, trained people that are going to be effective. And so when they get out into the civilian world, they can be just as effective when they don't want to be in the military anymore, right? But we want retention. We want people to stay in for those 20 years. We got to make it worth their while. And that's not what we're doing. Nobody wants to join up to say, oh, I'm going to work 400 hours right now. And then, you know, like that, all that does is say, I didn't fucking sign up for this shit. Fuck this. As soon as I got my 4 years, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like, you know, that's not going to create the mentorship that we had before 9/11.
Well, and we haven't even talked about yet. So, you know, for anybody out there that never deployed or isn't part of the military, so it's pretty normal when you come back from deployment, that first week you work half days. They don't want you just thrown right back in with your families and given a free rein with your families. They monitor to make sure there's no problems going on at home. They don't allow the people in the barracks to go out that first week. They have to stay on base, you know, because they know that you're going to go drink and they want you to drink on base until your body starts getting used to alcohol and all that stuff again, right? But then the pandemic came and all these guys were still deploying and still returning, except now you don't get no leave. Yep, you're going to go to work. And so for the next whole year, nobody could PCS. Nobody could go on leave. They couldn't go home to their moms and dads for Christmas because they were treated like a collector's item that they didn't want to get damaged.
Yeah.
You know, you weren't treating them like people anymore. All you cared about was the image of what if our soldiers get COVID? How will that make us look? You know, and I do feel that's the way it was about. You know, I don't personally have an opinion on the shot or any of that stuff. That's not my point. My point is you took their freedom away to use their leave, which is time to digress. You trapped them and said you're going to go to work every day, but you're not going to be able to go home. We're going to allow you to mix and mingle with everybody here, but you can't go on leave to go back to your hometown to go see your family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that's bullshit. And you know, in a way, I kind of felt bad because I was kind of saying a prayer to myself, saying, "Thank God I'm not in no more," because this is just, you know. And I seen it. I was one of those salty NCOs, like you said, that I just was like, I'm done with this shit. I said, you know, when it gets to the point that you're driving to work wishing a fucking deer would run out in front of you, so you had an excuse not to go to work anymore. It's just not fun. It's not fun no more.
Right.
You know, and it had nothing to do with the soldiers. You know, I joke because I say the recruits that we were getting, it turned me into a professional babysitter. But the realistic was, it was the politics. It was the way we treated soldiers. And when I got told I had to rate my soldiers from who was the best and who was the worst, and I couldn't have any ties because those are the ones that were going to be determined whether they could reenlist, and we only had so many slots, and you know, good soldiers were being hand shook and said, well, there's just no more room for you. Thanks for serving. Have a nice day. And their career was over. I was done. That was the end of it for me.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was there when the Navy started to kick people out for being too good at their job. And then, you know, years later, they were like, well, we have a gap. We're understaffed in this. Yeah. You guys got rid of all the good people, right? You can't keep burning people out. And for me, I guess leadership for me has always been, if I take good care of my people, if I invest into knowing their needs, right, and what they need from me, they are always going to execute the mission. The mission will execute itself. I can guide, I can steer the way, but so long as I take care of my people, they're going to do it for me. And then I had to deal with leadership in the military where it was mission first, people second, right? And that was so difficult for me to see this because I can see how they're breaking these people down and putting no morale behind it, right? The fastest way to make somebody leave the military is to disvalue them, right? And to take that morale. And when you take that spirit that we had with the ability to have the mission just run itself, you're making us weak. You're making us weak. And we can only do so much. We can only do so much to people. And do we want to execute the mission or do we want to take care of our people, right? And I've always been of if I take care of my people, yeah, okay, you get once in a while, they're going to fuck up, sure, right? Everybody does that once in a while. But for the most part, if you provide all of their needs, if you take care of them on every single way, they're going to do it for you. They're going to take care of you. And it's not even going to be, you won't even have to ask. They will show up to work and say, I'm ready to go after this. You know, they won't have that feeling of like, God, I hope I fucking kill myself before I get to work. Or where they're in the parking lot and they're like, I'm going to need fucking 10 minutes right here to convince me to walk in through that door. You know, you got to put that extra 10 minutes of like, all right, I'm going to go do this today. Please don't let me kill no fucking buddy. All right. You know, like I've had that command, right? I worked for the Department of Defense, right? I remember sitting in that fucking parking lot having this conversation with myself, right? And so, you know, that's a reflection of leadership. It's poor leadership. And those are the things that are dangerous to our military. When you take care of your people, it works. When you put mission first, it does not work. Not for long term.
No,
Not-
I think going back to 9/11 era, like right after everything took off, and you know, you talk about the soldiers being burnt out and stuff like that. I think the leadership was burnt out, man. Like, I mean,
absolutely.
the low level leadership, you know what I mean? Like E5s, E6s, E4 Mafia, even like those guys, they were just, I mean, they were tired.
Yep.
Right.
And I mean, reality, E4 Mafia is where it's at, you know?
They're not bad.
That's what I got out at. But, you know, the E5.
They always get the jobs done. You would just be like, I'm gonna let you do that, but I'm gonna walk right over there.
Yep.
And I'm gonna go make coffee right quick and drink some coffee, and then you'll come report and tell me what y'all did.
Got that paperwork to go do, man.
No, just come and tell me it's done. Don't even tell me how you did it. I don't want to know.
I don't need any details. My back is turned. I've drank my coffee. Y'all did it. Good to go.
Yep. Absolutely.
I really think the leadership, you know, the people, that level of leadership that had access to the E1s, E2s, E3s, E4s, those people were so burnt out that they didn't even care or know how to lead anymore. They just wanted to be done with it. And
they wanted out.
From that point forward, it just progressively got worse. And to where now, I mean, I don't know what it's like now. I'm not there, but I just don't seem like it don't seem like it's moved in a forward progression at all in the last 17 years, you know?
Yeah, I would agree. You know, and I do agree with you. There was two things that was happening, I think. So the officer corps was getting younger and younger, and the E6s, the E5s, like you said, we were getting burned out. We were tired of training officers, and we had I had a company commander, and I don't remember his real name. Everybody called him Captain Douche because his name was real close to that. But he's the only commander I've ever seen that got relieved and chaptered out of the military. I mean, that's how I've never seen. He got relieved from Afghanistan, of all places.
He was going for something special, douchebag of the year.
Yeah. So, you know, I remember the bad part is us old guys. The more we deployed, I think the more our give a fuck just didn't matter. We really didn't care anymore who we told to go fuck off. And,
right.
I remember this went on for a while, man. Every Friday, Captain Douche would go around hiding like soda cans and shit in Humvees, and he would tell the NCOs, if this place ain't clean, the soldiers are going to go home, but you guys are not. You'll stay here and clean. If you can't make them do it, then you're going to do it. And we were going on like month and a half of him playing these fucking games where he was hiding trash in Humvees and shit. And one day I heard that it was happening again. It was a Friday. And I grabbed my hat and I said, I had a fucking enough. And I walked into the First Sergeant's office. I threw my fucking hat against the ground. I said, I'm going to tell you what. I said, if he releases these fucking troops and he tells us to clean this fucking motor pool, I'm walking the fuck out with him. I said, I am done with this fucking childish bullshit. I said, he don't even have a fucking combat patch. You know? And my person was like, yeah, just go ahead and sit down, cool off. He said, I'll be back. And he walked over to the commander. He said, yeah, we're not keeping anybody today. He said, for your safety, we're not keeping anybody today. But I mean, it was bullshit. It was these childish games that, you know, I mean, like I said, I was now at like, well, I was after my last deployment. So I had already had 68 months of deployments. You know, I was fucking tired of it. You're taking time away from my family that I already don't get.
Right.
So, you know, I was tired of it. And to see somebody like him who didn't even know how to lead.
Right. And a role of leadership. Right.
Yeah.
It would kill me. I would be at intel briefings. Right. And, you know, if you look at the invasion of Iraq, right, they poorly planned it. Right. They let politics run our operations, right? Yeah. Politics they don't belong in the military, right? They don't belong in our strategies, right? This is not how politics don't win wars. We do, right? And so they rolled us in there. They didn't have adequate housing. We had no tents. We had no food. We had no place to put our fucking shit. And we created burn pits. Now, they knew this. They were briefed at the highest level. And I mean the presidential level. They briefed these people and said, this is not how we should operate. We should not send our people in like this. This military strategy is wrong, right? Again, politics plays into this. So now we have how many veterans that served that are dying from cancers from these burn pits? But they knew this. Yeah. They knew this. They self-created this. So then they allow leadership to be in place that's political. And that costs lives. That costs lives when we were in our invasion, right? And it's costing lives on the back end. People are dying from cancer because they made the decision to let politics play. Yeah. And so we need leadership where we say honor, courage, commitment, our core values, how we operate is based on that. We don't pay attention to politics, right? Yeah. We execute our missions. We take care of our people. We make sure that everybody that we possibly can comes back as whole as we can get them. Yep. We don't do that anymore. No, and so, right. We have leadership that has to be changed at an officer level, right? When I trained over 700 officers before they went into the fleet. They had to come to one of my classes before they got command of their ship, right? And the arrogance with some of them is ridiculous, right? Yeah. Because they have this pompous attitude that's been instilled into them where they believe that they're training, they're smarter, right? Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'll take an NCO any day. Oh yeah, I would take that experience, that saltiness any single day to help lead the mission, right? Yep. And so even within the military, we have allowed division. Right. Yep. And so, yes, it's one thing to be an officer and be able to say, OK, the decision ultimately lies with me. I will make this decision. Right. I'm in this leadership role. I will execute this way. But that is not the way to lead. Right. Yep. The way to lead is to always listen to the input of every single person that is valuable at that table. So if an E3 comes to me and says, hey, I looked at this way, and I know LT is over here saying this shit right here, but you do know that the parts, right, that for that, it's not going to be available for 3 days. So if we go and run this op right now, we're going to be stuck. And if that happens, we're fucked. The enemy can get to us very easier, right? But this guy is so LT, he's like, oh, I need a ribbon, right? Yeah. I need to be able to say I did something, right? But meanwhile, your E3 is saying that's going to put us in a position where we could die, right? So does old boy need a ribbon or do we need to keep our unit intact, right? Yeah. And so that's where leadership is invaluable. Like just degrading somebody based on their rate rather than their knowledge set is ridiculous. That's got to be taken out of the military, right? Leadership and how we train our officers and our enlisted, it fundamentally has to be changed. It has to.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I completely agree. So tell everybody a little bit about where they can find your guys' podcast. Where's the main platform that you guys are going to be listed on?
Right now, we're putting out. We've already done our first episode. We pre-recorded. It'll be released on Thursday, and we got a couple of video clips going up on Facebook at Bourbon Battle Buddies. Okay. I believe Audrey's putting them on her social media as well, Blanton's Bay. Okay. So we've got little clips going up, but the podcast will be available on YouTube and Spotify and wherever Spotify decides to send it to. Okay. But we're releasing it through Spotify, and the video portion of it will be available on YouTube this Thursday.
Okay. And I will make sure when I air the audio version of this, I will include the links in the description down there. So I'll pull them from y'all's YouTube channel because I have subscribed. So.
So you were
Thank
number
you.
3.
I don't know what number I was, but I did subscribe.
You were lucky number 3.
What? Cheers to that.
Absolutely. See, I got in early, man. I got the good seat.
Yeah,
It's only up from here. It's only up from here.
Absolutely.
You'll be known as one of the originals now.
The original OG founding fathers.
That's it. I'm the OG. We'll call me OG Salty.
I'm down. That needs a T-shirt. You should totally get that.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what. I appreciate you guys coming on. This has been a great time. We need to do this more often so we can just have a reason to drink. I mean, not that I need one. But...
I never need a reason. Sailors don't need those reasons. I know that's different in the Army, but if you come on this side, you don't need reasons.
Yep. Go and hang on for a second. Let me end this live, and then I'll get with you guys. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, absolutely. It's been a blast.